Hi guys, Ryu here from Blender Bros, and in this video we're gonna start modeling. But before we do, I want to tell you about one more tiny add-on that I recommend you get. It's also free. You don't need to do this if you don't want it, but I really recommend you do it because it's gonna save you a lot of headache as well. It's called PowerSave. So go to Gumroad and just simply download this PowerSave by Bongiorno7, who is a member of Team C, and this if you know that the Team C is behind Hardops and Boxcutter. So grab that add-on, download it, and install the same way you installed Machine Tools. So simply go to install it, and then simply click one of these boxes to enable it, right? And save preferences, and then you're gonna see that icon here on the top. Click that, and you need to enable autosave and switch here to autosave suffix. And here you can change the autosave interval. At the moment 2 stands for 2 minutes, so every 120 seconds I'm gonna have an autosave saving automatically to a new file, my Blender. So watch this. If I'm going to now Shift A and add a cube, and I'm gonna run a regular save, so I'm going to select this file here, set it to 1, or let's say device _1, and I'm gonna save this. Now if I'm gonna run PowerSave here, okay, you will see in the bottom that PowerSave save it as device _2. So here you see that I have this device _1, and this file is created by PowerSave. And now after 2 minutes, if I introduce some changes to my file here, after 2 minutes I'm gonna have an automatic save created by PowerSave. You can see that the icon is grayed out, but it's going to turn green when PowerSave going to create a save. See, now after 2 minutes, what happened is that our icon turned green, and also we have this automatically saved file here, device _2 autosave. This file is going to be overwritten every 2 minutes until you create a new PowerSave with this icon. So PowerSave, and this will add additional file underneath, and then after 2 minutes when you introduce changes to your file, you're gonna see another autosave file that's gonna be overwritten every 2 minutes. So now what I suggest you do is every time you reach a sort of like critical phase of your design, let's say we're gonna create some kind of a leg, one of the legs of this device, and I'm gonna create a new PowerSave. So every time you reach sort of a milestone of your design, create a manual PowerSave, so then you're gonna have automatically saved your data to a new autosave file. And then when your Blender crashes, right, let's say my Blender crashes without saving, okay, so I'm gonna open my Blender, press Ctrl S with Machine Tools, and I'm gonna click on most recent file, and it will load in the most recent file that was auto-saved, which is this one with these cubes being moved, right? So this will save you a lot of headache, because the most you lose is about 2 minutes of work, and if you change this interval to 1 minute, you're gonna lose basically 60 seconds. So if your Blender crashes, it's really easy to recover your data, okay? So let's just clear that, so A and X, and delete it. I'm going to enable my screencast keys so you can see what I'm pressing, and we can start modeling. So first of all, what we're going to do, we're going to design one of these legs of this device, and then we're going to mirror it across the shape, okay? So we only have to design one of them. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add a cube. So before we do anything, let me remind you about the View Pie menu, okay? When you press tilde key on your keyboard, which is a key left to your number 1 key on your main keyboard, you will see that pie menu with views. And just remember that very easily you can manipulate with your scene by moving to left, right, top, or bottom. Now you press the button, you move your mouse, and you release. It works like any other pie menu, and once your muscle memory kicks in, you're gonna be able to manipulate with it very quickly, okay? So usually what I do, okay, I work in side view, so I'm gonna press tilde key, move my mouse over the right button and release, and then I'm working in a way that my side view hits the y-axis perpendicularly, okay? So I'm looking sort of from, you know, from this side, and the y-axis goes across here, okay? That's my side view, and this is how I like to model, because a lot of tools from, for example, HardOps and other tools, they actually work really well on a y-axis, okay? For example, curves, etc. It's just the nature of Blender. So I recommend you start using your right view as your side view for modeling, okay? So this is gonna be front here, right? Front's gonna be here on this y-axis, and this is a side view from this side, okay? So this is side, this is front, right? So again, right side, and there we go. And again, if you want to switch between orthographic here on the top and perspective, you press numpad 5. I recommend you bind it to your mouse, okay? So it's highly recommended you buy a mouse with more than 2 keys, okay? So a gaming mouse is probably preferable for Blender. My mouse, if you're wondering, I'm using Rat8 from Mad Catz. It's a really heavy mouse, so I have a really big hand, so it's very comfortable for me. Also, my fingers can write on top of the mouse, which is really cool. Anyway, so let's go to orthographic view with numpad 5 and press SY to scale it, okay, a little bit. And then we're going to rotate it with middle mouse button and SX and scale it a little bit on X to make it taller. Now let's go to perspective mode with numpad 5 and let's see how we're looking. We're looking pretty good. Now remember what I told you about scale, right? So when I'm going to press N and I'm going to go to item, you see that my scale changed on X and Y because we scaled it on X and scaled it on Y. Now because I scaled it in object mode, not in edit mode, my scale has shifted, because if you do the same thing in, you know, in edit mode, it will not affect the scale. But since I scaled it in object mode, it actually affects the scale. I want to reset it, because scale is something that you really want to reset, especially when you want to work with bevels. Because let me show you what will happen if I'm going to add bevel to one of these edges, okay? So I'm going to press tab, move my mouse to the bottom and release to go to edge mode. Click on this edge and press Ctrl B. Ctrl B is a shortcut for bevel, and you can see that this bevel is really flat, okay? And it's really flat because this object was scale on y-axis is really long, okay? So the y-axis scale is sort of off balance. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna press Alt Z to undo that, go to object mode, so tab and object mode, press Ctrl A to access this apply menu and apply scale. And you can see now the scale was reset to 1 by 1 by 1. So now when I'm gonna go back to edge mode, so tab, edge, and Ctrl B, now you can see that now the bevel is running at 45 degrees, which is basically perfect, right? So this is what you want to do. So you can use the kind of like an uniform scale for artistic purposes if you want to, you know, run some really flat bevels. But I'm warning you that if you're going to be using modifiers like solidification, array, bevel modifier, etc., it will always, the scale will always affect how it looks. So remember to reset it. Now, if you're using add-ons, for example, like Box Cutter will automatically apply this scale when you start using cutters, which is again why we're using add-ons for hard surface modeling, because they save a lot of time. So now let's just Ctrl Z that, because that's not what I want to do with this shape. Let's go to side view, so tilde key and right view, and orthographic, and let's go to object mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this shape, Shift D, and move it somewhere here. I'm going to rotate it with R, so press R and rotate it. Now I don't really have to press any axes because I'm working in orthographic view. When you work in orthographic view, the object is going to be rotated along the axis you're looking at. So now we're looking through the x-axis, okay? X-axis is going straight towards this cube, right? So when I rotate it, it's going to rotate it on x-axis here, right? Like this. See what I mean? So this is why I'm in orthographic view. So I'm going to rotate it a bit, and when you hold Control, you can actually snap it to increments, which is really cool, okay? So you can define angles a little bit more accurately. So let's create an angle like that. Move this cube somewhere here. Maybe that's a bit too steep. So R, hold Control, and let's do something like that. And now we're going to extend this cube a little bit on x-axis, because you can see that they have identical width, which means there's kind of like a z-fighting here. We call it z-fighting. When two surfaces are on the same, occupy the same space in 3D view, and Blender doesn't know which one is on top of which, okay? So it's get confused. So when you have this kind of a situation, what you usually want to do, you want to make the cutter, because we're going to be using this as a cutter, a bit bigger. So you want to scale it on X. So SX, and you're going to scale it so it's actually wider than the one that you want to cut, right? So let's go to right view again, right? Select this one on top, then shift select the one on the bottom, and press Control minus, okay? And minus on your numpad, Control minus. And this will allow you to use a shortcut for Boolean operation, for cut Boolean operation. And the reason why we are able to use the shortcut is because of the bool tool add-on that we install. Okay, this allows us to use this Control minus, Control forward slash, etc. shortcuts for booleans. So now what I can do is I can move this cutter independently. So click on the cutter and I can move it. You can see I can adjust the shape to whatever I want. Let's just right click to drop it back to where it was. And if you're satisfied with, with this shape, and I think we kind of are, we could move it a little bit forward. So G, let's hold Shift to slow down the movement, and move it maybe somewhere here. You could actually do, you could actually go with GY and sort of move it somewhere here like that. That's pretty cool. I'm good with that. Now what we want to do is we want to create a collection for our cutters so we can turn them off very easily, because at the moment they occupy the same collection, right? So remember what we did with collections before. We press M, we go to new collection, we're gonna call it cutters, right? And press OK. And this will move this cutter to this collection, right? Cutters. So now if I'm gonna press Shift 2, I can remove all cutters that I have in my scene. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to move the cutters manually after each Boolean operations to this collection, unlike when you work with box cutter, which does it automatically. So again, this is why we use add-ons, because they just save a lot of time. Let's press N to collapse this panel because we don't need it. We can also hover mouse here and make this panel a bit smaller, because we want this real estate to be really big, okay? So it's comfortable to work in. Cool. Now I need another cut. I need a cut here, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna Shift D this again and move it somewhere here. Now when I do that, you can see that my object is being cut. The reason why it's happening is because this Boolean cutter here is immovable, but I'm moving the object. But since I duplicated it, this object carries the Boolean from the original object. So if I move it somewhere here and I'm gonna press on this wrench, you'll see that we have this bool tool, we have this Boolean modifier here still being active. So you can remove it from that cutter because we don't really need it, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press G and move it somewhere here, and I wanna cut this shape here a little bit. But now the problem is that I cannot see what I'm cutting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press Alt Z, which will allow me to see through mesh. And now I can actually move my mesh with G, holding Shift to slow down the movement. You can always press Shift and hold it to slow the movement. And we want to align it somewhere here, more or less like this, and we want to cut this piece for a wheel support, okay? Again, SY to scale it, press Alt Z to exit this X-ray mode, click on this one, Shift click on this one, and we're gonna this time press Control forward slash, which will introduce a slash boolean. So what we'll do, instead of cutting a piece off, it will actually cut it into two pieces, so 1 and 2, right? So now we have two pieces of geometry, right? So we have this one and this one, okay? Cool. Let's select this cutter, press M, and move it to cutters. We have this shape, and now we need to create another cut here, and this one's gonna be a little bit more tricky. So we're gonna borrow the shape again, so Shift D, borrow it again, move it somewhere here. Let's remove both booleans because we don't need them. And we're going to move this cutter somewhere here, right? And let's just move our scene, holding the middle mouse button somewhere here. GX, move it out here, right? Maybe like that. That's cool. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to go to edit mode, so edge mode, select this edge here, and G, Y, and move it a little bit this way, okay? So forward, like that. Cool. With this done, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a bevel. Now, it's really important to get into a habit of creating bevels that have even segments and uneven number of edges. What does it mean? Well, if I'm gonna press Ctrl B and move my mouse to the right, you can see that I'm creating a bevel. Now, if I'm gonna scroll my mouse up, I'm gonna start adding segments to that bevel to make it a bit more dense. Now, you can see here in the bottom, right, there is a number of segments for that bevel. So I got 6 segments here, and that's even number of segments. The reason why you want to keep even number of segments is because when you're going to be creating game assets in the future and you want to optimize them for game assets, so you want to create a lower poly version of your main object, you're going to be decimating bevels, which means you're going to be making bevels less dense. So you can easily select every second edge of your bevel, press X, and dissolve it, okay? And this will kind of cut the resolution of the bevel in half. If you have uneven number, you will have to remove one of these edges, which actually hold the flatness of this face or this face. So you don't want to disturb these outer edges. We're gonna use here maybe 8 segments, I would say. So scroll your mouse until you have 8 segments, and this should do, I think, okay? So side view, orthographic, and yeah, this is good. So next thing we're gonna do, we're going to go to a mode called local mode. Because you see now I cannot see through this mesh. I cannot see what's behind, right? I could go to, occlude mode and sort of select edges in here, but I want to show you this kind of like a local view, which is really, really useful. So when you press / on your keyboard, you're going to go to a mode called local view, which basically isolates your selected object from the scene. So now it's easy to select this edge here, right, in the back. So what we're going to do is select this edge here, and then we're going to hold Control and press on this edge here, which will select this entire edge, okay? And then we're going to press / to go back, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control B that, and I'm going to actually create a bevel over there, right? Like this, and click. So now we have the bevel going on inside of this shape, right? So now let's cut it. Now before we cut anything, what we need to do is we need to smooth this mesh out, because you can see there's a faceting going on. So now what we need to do in Vanilla Blender to smooth it, we need to do a few things. Right click on the mesh and shade smooth, which will create a very kind of like a really weird shading. To fix that, we need to add something called auto smooth, which will basically sharpen certain angles and smooth others, okay? So we go here to this tab with this triangle and then to normals, and you enable auto smooth, and this will fix the problem. And you have to do it for every single mesh. So right click, shade smooth, auto smooth. Right click, shade smooth, and auto smooth, right? So for every single mesh. Now, we're gonna select this shape, shift select this shape, and Control minus. And we're gonna get this kind of a cool cut here in the middle. Now we can move this cutter, of course, if you want to. So we can select it, and we can move it, so GX, and we can move it a little bit outside. Now, what I want you to pay attention to is not to move this cutter deep enough, so it will actually, this bevel here will overlap with this edge. The reason is that we're going to be running another bevel on this edge here, on this edge, okay, on this edge. So this edge here, right? So what you want to avoid is you want to avoid overlap of bevels. So you don't want to have this kind of a situation, right? Because in polygon modeling, when you start overlapping bevel, it's possible to do, but it requires a lot of work in terms of topology fixing, and it's a little bit more advanced. So it's better to avoid this for now. So we're going to move this cutter, on x-axis, but not deep enough, so there's a bit of a flat face left here. So kind of like that, and let's just go to object mode, and we're good to go. Before we remove this cutter, we're gonna mirror it to the other side, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a mirror modifier. So let's go to modifiers, and we're going to add mirror modifier to that cutter, right? Now you can see that our main shape has disappeared, but that's okay, don't worry about it. Now we're gonna turn off the visibility of this modifier, here in viewport, we're going to select this pipette here, and we're going to mirror this across this object, and we're going to turn it back on. And now you can see that this cutter was mirrored across the shape on the x-axis to the other side. Okay, now we can press M and move it to cutters. So we are left with this shape, and this is pretty cool, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to introduce some bevels. So let's grab this shape here and this one together. So click and shift click, go to edge mode, select this edge and Control B, and let's just bevel it with 8 segments. That's okay. Actually, maybe we can use 6. So scroll your mouse down, 6, that's enough. And click and go to object mode. Perfect. Now we need to mirror this object to the other side, right? So what we need to do is we need to add a mirror modifier. So mirror. Now after adding mirror, we need to bisect it, so it's gonna mirror properly to the other side. That's cool. And then we need to do the same thing here. So let's just add a mirror, okay, and bisect, boom, and that's perfect. So this would do for now. And now we're going to actually cut this here a little bit to make it a bit more appealing, okay? So we're going to grab another cube, so Shift A and add another cube. And we're going to G and move it in here. SY to scale it. We're going to Control A and apply scale. We're going to right click and shade it smooth. And we're going to go here and auto smooth. And then we're going to rotate it a little bit, holding Control, do the same trick, and move it somewhere here like this. Again, you don't want to overlap with this bevel here, okay? So just move it a little bit lower, somewhere like that here, maybe like that. Maybe actually we're gonna rotate it a bit more this way, kind of like a gentle slope, and move it somewhere here, something like this. R, and rotate it a bit this way, cool. And we can cut it, so SX to scale it, and then select this one, shift select this one, Q, and then Control minus, and select this cutter and M and cutters. And this is our, you know, basically our leg shape kind of finished more or less. Now we can start applying booleans. So here now, when you want to apply boolean, we need to click on this arrow, but you can see it's grayed out. Now the reason why it's grayed out is because this object shares data with this object. It's a piece of this object, right? So what we need to do, we need to go here and we need to click on this number to clear the linked data. So click on that, go back to modifiers, and then you can apply your boolean. So apply the boolean, apply another boolean, and we're left with a mirror, which is cool. Same here, we need to apply the boolean, apply this boolean, apply that boolean, and we can move this boolean to the top and apply it. So we're now left just with mirrors, and that's perfect, okay? Cool. So here what we can do is go to edit mode, right? And since we're mirroring from left to right, what we're gonna do is we're going to grab this edge here and Control B and scroll your mouse down to go back to chamfer, and we're gonna create something like this. Grab this edge here and G, Y, and move it a little bit this way. So it's gonna become like a more gentle slope here, right? It's cool. Grab this edge here and Control B, and here we're going to introduce about 6 segments, okay? So something like that, and click and go to object mode. It's gonna get mirrored to the other side automatically, okay? Cool. Now here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna introduce a chamfer. So we're gonna go to edge mode, right? We're gonna turn off this path through, select this one and hold Control and select this entire edge around here, and press Control B and hold Shift to slow down the movement. Scroll down to the chamfer and select it, you know, kind of like a decent width of it. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold Alt and click here to select this entire loop across, right? Control B, and we're gonna scroll this to, let's say, I would say 8 segments, and create like a really gentle slope. And now we got this really nice curvy surface here, and you know, really interesting shape for this wheel. Now we're going to add cylinder, so let's go to Shift A and add a cylinder. Now, important thing to note with cylinders is that you can change the density of them, because you can see that this one has a certain amount of vertices, but you can only do it after you add the cylinder. So watch this. Shift A and add a cylinder, and there's a small menu here on the left, right? See the menu? If I'm going to go to edit mode, this menu is going to disappear. It will never appear again. So what you need to do after you add a cylinder, go to this menu. If you want to change number of vertices, you need to do it now. So let's make it, you know, I don't know, let's say 40, okay? And you see that number of verts changed. Now it's a bit more dense. So the circle, this cylinder is going to be a bit more smooth. So right click and shade smooth, and here and auto smooth. Now we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees on the y axis. So RY90, okay? So you simply press R, Y, and type 90, okay? So it's going to get rotated. Side view here. And press G and move this wheel somewhere here. I'm going to make it a bit smaller, so maybe not small. And we're going to scale it. So SX, and scale it down like this. And this should do maybe a little bit bigger like that. And we could just, you know, move it just a tiny bit higher here like this. I think this is cool. So now let's Shift D this, okay, to duplicate it. Right click to cancel. S to scale it, just hold shift here, scale it just a little bit so it's bigger than the other one. Shift click this shape and Control minus. This will create a boolean that will cut out the shape of this wheel inside of this wheel holder, right? Now you can actually scale it a little bit, holding Shift SY, make it a little bit bigger like this, and you know there's going to be an opening for this wheel, okay? So press M and cutters. Now grab this, we can have some fun with it. So Control A to apply scale. This should be like a routine basically. So let's go to face mode, select this face here and Shift select this face. Control B and scale it, and scroll your mouse down to a chamfer, right? Then select this one, Shift select this one, press I for inset and move your mouse left to inset, okay? And click and then press E for extrusion. But because we want to extrude it on both sides, what we're going to do is right click, okay? Now be careful because this is extruded. So if you press G, this is extruded. But what we're going to do, we're going to press Alt S. And Alt S will allow us to scale this on both sides along the normals of these faces. So press Alt S, and when you move your mouse down, it's going to go in. When you're going to move your mouse up, it's going to go outside. But if I'm going to rotate this to the other side, you see it's going to work on both sides, right? So here, press Alt S, move your mouse down, hold Shift, and scale it down a bit. Make sure here you are on individual origins, and then we're going to press F to scale it in to create like a tapered kind of opening. Then we're going to Alt click on this edge, which will select the whole loop. So go to Edge and Alt click on the edge here, right, to select the whole loop. Control B, hold Shift, and create this kind of a chamfer. So now we're going to symmetrize it to the other side, okay? So we're going to symmetrize this chamfer to the other side because we didn't actually chamfer this side. Now, before we do anything with symmetry, what we need to do is we need to apply rotation because rotation is flipped. So here, if I'm going to go to End Panel, you see that our rotation is the object is rotated by 90 degrees because we rotated on the y-axis. So we need to reset it, otherwise our local x-axis is going to go vertically. So watch, GX, that's the global, but if I press X one more time, that's local. So we need to reset it. So Control A and reset rotation to 0, right? So once we did that, what we need to do is press A to select all of the mesh, then go to Mesh, Symmetrize, and now you need to choose an axis. By default is -x to x, okay? So it's from left to right. You need to flip that, so you need to symmetrize from x to -x to mirror here for a second. So let's just apply the mirror and apply the boolean. And then what we're gonna do is we're going to press Shift S and move our origin to geometry, okay? So now it's here in this area, which is exactly what we want, okay? Another thing we can do is go to edge mode, and we could, you know, smooth this out a little bit. So create like maybe 4 segments here, just to create a smooth bevel. Alt click this edge on the top, which will technically select the whole loop. If you want to check it, you can go to local view, so /. So if you want to select the other side of this mesh, what you want to do is hold Shift and Alt, and click here. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to Control B that, and we're going to scroll the mouse to create a chamfer. Hold Shift to, slow down the movement. Go to Object View, and perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to symmetrize it to the other side, this chamfer, right? So let's go to Edit Mode, select everything, go to Mesh, Symmetrize, and it should remember the +x to -x. So this bevel here gets symmetrized to the other side, okay? So Object View, and perfect. This is now done. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to apply bevel to the whole thing, and also weighted normals, okay? So click on this object, and let's just go here to modifiers and click on a bevel. Now there are a few things we need to do to make this look civil. First of all, we need to move the bevel above the mirror, okay? So first we bevel, then we mirror. Secondly, we're going to hold Shift, we're going to change this amount to something a little bit less insane, okay? Right, so kind of a smaller bevel. Increase the number of segments to 3, okay? And then what we're going to do on top of that, we're going to change the miter, because you can see that there's kind of like a nasty squarish beveling here. The reason for that is when you go to, I think it was under geometry, right? Miter outer should be set to arc. And this is going to, smooth things out a little bit. Right click, shade smooth, and make sure that auto smooth is on, and everything is PG. Now you see that we got some shading problems all over the mesh, right? The reason for that is because Bevel now has introduced kind of like a really weird auto smoothing on large surfaces. To fix that, we need to add one more modifier, and that's weighted normal. So let's go here, let's collapse these two modifiers, okay? Click on that and click on weighted normal, and this one should be always at the bottom of the stack, okay? So you can, if you have it somewhere here, you need to move it to the bottom, right? And never apply this, okay? Never apply this modifier, not even when you're exporting the mesh, okay? Just don't touch it. So the bevel is a little bit crazy here, so we're gonna make it a bit smaller. So hold Shift, and we can just, just make it a little bit smaller, and it should be cool. Perfect. And now what we can do is we can sort of copy these modifiers to this piece. So watch this. We're gonna select this piece, Shift select this piece, press Ctrl C, and thanks to the add-on we installed, this Blender add-on called Copy Attributes menu, we can actually copy modifiers. So Ctrl C and copy modifiers. Okay, so here, copy modifiers. This will copy the mirror, the bevel, and the weighted normals to this mesh, and it will ensure that we're gonna have the identical bevel running on both meshes, which is really cool, right? The last thing I want to do is I want to make this piece a bit smaller, but I want to make it smaller only on this side, okay? So what I want to do is I want to move this bit a little bit to the right. So we can do this in edit mode. Let's go to vertex mode. Let's click here to clean that. And now I want to select all the vertices across the whole mesh. To be able to do that in orthographic view, right, I need to be able to see through mesh. So press tab and click on occlude, then press B, select these shapes here and release your mouse, and then press GY and you can move it and just this shape here a little bit to the front, okay? Then I'm gonna click here, press B, select the top bits, GZ, and move it just a little bit to the bottom, so there's a tiny gap between these two shapes, suggesting that this part now can move. What I want to do is I want to make sure that this part moves with the wheel, so the wheel moves with it. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna parent this wheel to that shape. So this one's gonna be a parent, this is gonna be a child, okay? So select the shape, Shift select this object, press Ctrl P, and click on Object Keep Transform. This will allow you to keep transformation or any transformations that you have running on these objects, like rotation, scaling, etc. So Object Keep Transform. This will create kind of like a line between these two objects, like a dotted line. But when I'm going to move now this object, the wheel's going to move with it, which is really cool. If you want to clean that parenting, you simply click on Object and press Alt P, and you click on clear and keep transformation. This is going to revert this parenting. Okay, cool, awesome. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click on this, shift click on this one, Control P, and parent that to this main object. So when I'm going to move this one, everything else will move with it. The last thing I want to do, I want to copy the bevel and the way it almost to the wheel. So click on the wheel, shift click here, Control C, and copy modifiers. And another thing I want to do is create kind of like a sort of like a wheel holder. So Shift A and add a cube. Let's make this cube a bit smaller. So S and scale it, G and move it somewhere here, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna GX and X and move it somewhere here. Then SX and scale it like this, okay, right? And we're gonna bevel this. So Control A and apply scale. Go to edge mode. Select this and this with Shift, and then Control B and scroll to, let's say, 8 segments and create something like this. Okay. Then we're going to grab this edge here. So hold Control and keep clicking until you select this whole loop. Control B and scroll your mouse down to create a chamfer. Then we're gonna select this one, right click and sheet smooth. Click here, auto smooth. Shift click this one, Control C, copy modifiers. And then we're going to change the bevel. Now this is really interesting because the bevel on this one is quite large. You see here, this chamfer is really small. And what happens is that the bevel is overshooting and this is why you have this nasty edge here. So the bevel simply is too large, and two bevels on these two edges are overshooting one another. So what we need to do is hold Shift and scale this bevel a little bit down. You see that? See, when I'm going to go too crazy, they're going to start overshooting. Yeah. See what I mean? So just make it smaller and everything's gonna be peachy. You can even type it manually here, like something like 0.2. There you go. Now we're gonna grab this piece and mirror to the other side, okay? So we're gonna add a mirror to it. So I just collapse that. Add a mirror to that piece, right? And we're gonna mirror this across this shape. Boom, sorted. And that's our wheel. And let's parent this to this wheel. So shift click, Control P, and keep transform. And now we have this whole shape moving as one, and this would conclude our our shape building. Now there's one more problem here, and there's a problem with shading. You can probably see this triangle here. The reason why it happens is because bevel doesn't catch this edge, and it doesn't catch this edge because this edge is lower than 30 degrees. This bevel affects every single edge on this mesh that has a larger angle than 30 degrees. Because this angle is smaller, this will not affect it. What you can do is you can reduce this angle to something smaller, but the problem is it's going to catch other bevels here, other angles here. This is an issue. So instead of what we're going to do, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We can introduce here another bevel, right? And we're going to move it to the top, and we're going to change here the let's introduce 3 segments and change miter to arc. And we're going to change the limit method from angle to weight. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click on this edge, right click in edge mode. You have to be in edge mode, right? Right click, go to edge bevel weight, and move your mouse to the right and click. And you can see that now your factor, bevel weight factor is at 1, which means maximum. We can reduce it to 0 or set it to 1. And you see like the shading is affected because we introduce in bevel. This bevel affects only this edge, okay? And this will fix our problem in this area, okay? So that's how you can, solve the issue with bevels. Now, if you wanted to run just one bevel and set it to weight, what you can do is select one of these edges in edge mode, go to select, and you could go here to select sharp edges, which will select every single edge above 30 degrees. And then you right click bevel weight and you add weight to every single of these edges, right? So you could do it this way, and then you don't need this bevel, okay? So you can just simply disable it, right? But it's really up to you how you're gonna do this. You can run 2 bevels or 1 bevel. It's really doesn't matter. Now because this bevel now here is a separate bevel, you can adjust it separately too. So you can just adjust it to whatever you want. You can make it a little bit less crazy, more crazy, let's say a bit more supple and add a bit more segments, like let's say 8. It's going to be a nice supple curve here, you know, and it's still adjustable. So this is how you can manipulate with multiple bevels on your mesh. Alright guys, well that's it for this one. I think we're going to continue in the next video. Thanks for watching and I see you soon.